What you're looking at right here is the official Friday schedule for President Obama released by the White House last night. This is what was on his public schedule for today. Now, as you can see here, it says the president receives the presidential daily briefing in the Oval Office at 11 a.m. Then it says the president meets with senior advisors in the Oval Office at 11:30 a.m. And then that's it. There's nothing else on the schedule, just a lazy July Friday. But then something interesting happened today. Something interesting happened on the way to the weekend.
Hello, everybody. Trying a little change of venue here, mix it up.
There was President Obama in the Roosevelt Room at noon, delivering a statement that was added to his schedule at the very, very last minute.
I want to talk about the progress that we made this week on three fronts. First, I signed a Wall Street reform bill. Second, I signed a law that will improve our ability to crack down on improper payments made by our government. Third, we finally overcame the procedural blockade of a partisan minority in the Senate to restore unemployment insurance for about 2.5 million Americans who are out of work and looking for a job. So taken together, we made enormous progress this week.
Enormous progress this week. A great week. Look at how much we did. Why is an announcement like that the sort of thing that would be added to the president's schedule at the very last minute?
On Wednesday, the president signed the Consumer Protection and Financial Regulatory Reform Bill. That was on Wednesday, overshadowed a bit, perhaps, Lynn, by that fact that Shirley Sherrod had been fired. That entire saga that played over the course of the last 4 days definitely got the White House off message here. We're heading into the weekend. The president had no public events on his schedule as of about an hour ago. They laid this on here. The president, one more whack at it before we head into that weekend.
One more whack at winning back the news cycle. A late add to the president's schedule. The Shirley Sherrod controversy exploded all over the news the same exact day the president finally signed sweeping Wall Street reform into law. And that, of course, totally eclipsed that bill signing, that historic accomplishment in the news cycle. What happened this week perfectly encapsulates the big flashing red light political problem for the Obama administration right now. Over the last year and a half, they've put lots and lots of points on the board. They have scored legislative achievement after legislative achievement, but they have done so without much political capital to show for it. The Beltway media calls it the Obama paradox. No matter what the Obama administration and the Democrats in Congress accomplish legislatively, it's not earning them the political capital that it rightly should. I mean, think about what President Obama and congressional Democrats have accomplished in the last year and a half. The most historic financial reform since the Great Depression. Health reform, something that politicians of both parties have been chasing after for generations. The economic stimulus package, which not only included the largest middle-class tax cut in history, but also historic investments in infrastructure and alternative energy. When's the last time you heard this president get credit for the largest middle-class tax cut in history? They passed credit card reform. They passed really quite good student loan reform. There was civil rights legislation like the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act for women and the Hate Crimes Act. Historic nuclear agreements, both an international one about nuclear terrorism and one with Russia about nuclear weapons. Barack Obama won the freaking Nobel Peace Prize. And then, of course, there's the minor matter of achieving economic growth now, pulling the country back from what was, by all accounts, the brink of the Second Great Depression, turning the job numbers into the right direction, and doing it while retaining some semblance of the previous American economy that went totally Chernobyl barely 2 years ago. President Obama has managed to do all of this stuff in less than half a single term. And yet, here's his approval rating right now, 45% in the latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll. Here's the enthusiasm gap between Democrats and Republicans. Look at that, heading into November. People have all sorts of misconceptions right now about the stuff that has happened over the last 2 years. Polling numbers actually show that the Bush job losses are blamed on Obama. The Bush bailouts are blamed on Obama. Nobody credits the stimulus for any of the good economic things it is proven to have done. There's this gaping chasm between what people think about what has happened and what actually has happened. It all means that the policy achievements of this administration are not translating into political capital. They're not translating into popularity. The victor in this case, President Obama, is not receiving any of the spoils. He's not winning by winning. So what is sapping all the political capital from the administration? Well, here's something. Yesterday, the Washington Post reported that the Chamber of Commerce, the business lobby, is spending nearly $3 million per week in opposition to President Obama's major agenda items. About $150 million spent since Barack Obama took office last year. $3 million a week. And while they haven't been able to stop big agenda items like Wall Street reform or health reform, they probably do deserve some credit for stopping stuff like cap and trade, energy legislation, and union rights legislation, card check, as well as the public option and health reform. But even on the stuff that the corporate lobby loses on legislatively, like big picture health reform and Wall Street reform, they are able to prevent the administration from accruing any political capital from those wins by trashing those policies. It would be like if you won the World Series, but the whole time the World Series was being played, somebody was spending $150 million on ads saying, the World Series doesn't matter. And that team, they're a bunch of bums. They're the worst team in baseball. So, okay, you still win the World Series, you still get a parade, but nobody shows up to your parade. Nobody gives you any credit for winning. Well, the Chamber of Commerce is busy spending money hand over fist to trash specific policies. Fox News and right-wing activists, whom the Obama administration refuses to fight back against, is busy cementing this narrative on the right that the president is a Marxist, racist, socialist, foreigner, redistributionist, whatever. And you may not care what people on the right who aren't going to vote for you think anyway. But in a nation of independence, if that is staked out as the right-wing position, that you're a Marxist, socialist, foreigner, whatever, doesn't matter that those people aren't going to vote for you anyway. If that's the right-wing position, you're a crazy Marxist racist, and the left-wing position is you're an okay centrist Democrat, where's the middle in between those things? Where's the center between you're a crazy Marxist, racist, foreigner, and you're an okay centrist? Where's the middle? The middle between those two things is Ben Nelson. If the center is so warped by what you are letting them get away with on the right, if you're never attacking the right, if you're just letting their narrative stick because you don't really care about that lowbrow smear stuff and you don't want to, lower yourself down to fighting with people like that who are never going to vote for you anyway, then when centrist Democrats try to figure out where the center is, when they rightly or wrongly try to split the difference between what mainstream people think and what people on the right think, you end up losing them and not being able to win any of your precious legislative victories either, because you get people like Ben Nelson and Blanche Lincoln and Evan Bayh and Mary Landrieu trying to split the difference between Yawnsville in the center and Crazyville on the right, and we end up in Stuckville. The way to move the center back to anything approaching the center is to take on the right, to fight back, to not only lobby for your achievements, but to call out those mischaracterizing them. Letting lies and distortions and smears go unanswered is not working. You end up delivering last-minute statements on Friday afternoons to try to salvage some of the news cycle on a week when you've done something so historic you really shouldn't have to fight for that, but you do. You do when you have powerful enemies spending literally millions of dollars a week to make sure your message doesn't get through. If you still want to win, you don't lament those enemies and what they do. You take those enemies on and you beat them. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner of New York. Congressman Weiner, thanks very much for coming back on the show. Nice to see you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.
Why do you think the Obama administration and congressional Democrats aren't really accruing political capital commensurate with their achievements?
Well, for one thing, we're a party that has so much fidelity to outcomes and progress that sometimes we don't look up, we spend too much time trying to think about the process of things, and we don't realize that we might be losing the country behind us. But before we get too deep into the punditry, let's remember that list that you read off of the accomplishments here. These are real important things. There's a reason why they matter to the American people. These are real human beings who are behind getting some of these things. And that's important. Now, we are, no doubt about it, not doing a very good job of every day letting democracy work. It frustrates me to no end that we don't have actual votes in the Senate where the people who are actually against the public option have to stand up and say it. People who are actually against energy reform and empowering the Iranians don't have to stand up and say it. People who are actually for more money pouring into politics don't have to stand up and say it by voting against the fix of the Supreme Court decision on campaign finance. We sometimes think by short-circuiting the schedule to get to the outcome, we do ourselves a favor. In fact, sometimes we should fight for the things we believe in, even if it means we take a loss because it helps define what we're for.
Last night on this show, I made a version of the same advanced a version of the same thesis that I just did right now. And Jonathan Alter sort of rebutted by making the case that the Obama administration doesn't want to fight against Shirley Sherrod type smears from the right because they don't want to punch down.